Hi, I'm Sid, CEO and co-founder at GitLab, and today we're going to talk about Concurrent DevOps, how we came to Concurrent DevOps, what it is, how we think we can better articulate what it is, and what it can do for companies. And I'm here with Melissa and Todd from our marketing team, and they're going to probably poke holes in my reasoning a bit. So I'm looking forward to that. So we wanted to articulate what was the benefit of GitLab. And we did that a year and a half ago, I think, maybe 2 years ago by now. Melissa and Todd weren't here yet, so they didn't go through this process, but it was a process with the entire exec team. And we wanted to say, like, what is unique about GitLab? And the unique thing is that GitLab is a single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle. Okay, that's nice, but what do you get as a consumer of that? Well, you get all the benefits of a single application. Okay, that's nice, but what are the benefits of a single application? So we wrote those down because they weren't very intuitive to us. So here's a web page in the product handbook about the advantages of a single application. You only have to authenticate once, only have to authorize once. There's a simple interface, there's a single data source, there's a single code base. Okay, but what does that mean for me? Well, for example, if you want to push to your container registry, instead of having to state all the different things, like create a new project at the container registry, get some credentials, paste these credentials in your CI job, GitLab knows who you are, what you want to do. So you can just do that. It works. There's lots of other things mentioned here about things that you can do easier in GitLab. But none of this is very intuitive. In fact, like why is GitLab a single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle? Not because I thought of it, not because Dimitri thought of it. It's because of Camille. Camille first contributed a new, better version of GitLab Runner to GitLab. And then we said, oh, do you want to work for us? He joined us and he said to Dimitri, we have to combine GitLab version control with GitLab CI. And Dimitri said, you're obviously wrong, because no one combines those two. Those are separate things that are composable. And by the way, we integrated them really well already. Like, they have custom APIs. They only work with each other. They're awesome. He convinced Dimitri, they came to me, I said the same thing, you're obviously wrong. We should have small composable tools. That is the Unix philosophy. That's how we work. And he convinced me not by appealing to how much better the product would be, but that it would be more efficient. So we ended up doing it, but it turns out it's also way better for the product. And I think it's just hard to articulate. And I think it's not new. Like, for example, Ruby on Rails, the framework a huge part of GitLab is written in, was also such a revolution. Like, everyone who used it is like, this is way better. It's way more efficient and way quicker this way. But why? It's not super clear. In fact, like in the JavaScript community, you had a project called Meteor that tried to do the same thing there, and nobody liked it. Everyone's like, no, everything should be composable, and there shouldn't be a single thing. So then we started talking about, like, what is the essence of why a single application is better? And it's nice that we have all these things that are just slightly less set up. So that's a benefit. Like, instead of setting up, when you have a new project, setting it up in one application or in 10 applications, you only have to set it up once. But we have a lot of customers where GitLab replaces their existing systems, and their existing systems had the same thing. They kind of made something internally where create a new project and boom, it's created in Jira, in GitHub, in Circle CI, in JFrog Artifactory, and all those things. And still, GitLab is a way better solution in the day-to-day. So we're not sure. How do we articulate that? And we came to the essence is that in GitLab, you're not passing it along multiple stages. Like, if you push code to GitLab, immediately all the security tests run. You don't wait until something is ready and then send it off to some security testing. So people can work in parallel. The security people don't have to wait until the developers are ready. The operations people don't have to wait until the developers are ready either. The QA people can do something at the same time. So this working in parallel became it. Now, we could have called it parallel DevOps, but concurrency is the technical better term for working in parallel in programming. So that's why we decided to call it concurrent DevOps. But what we sell to organizations is like a faster DevOps lifecycle. Many times people go from many weeks to minutes. Why is that possible? Because it's no longer you make it and then you send it over to the next team and they go through a checklist and they send over to the next team. You both automate that, but also you start taking smaller steps and make sure that everything happens automatically and that people have the same visibility. Without GitLab, for example, frequently the monitoring in the production environments is not available to the developers that worked on the app in the first place. Like that's the kind of problems GitLab removes. Because everything is set up the right way. You don't have to wait. You don't have to ask someone for permission. You can work concurrently. And that's why we settled on concurrent DevOps as kind of the main thing. And we might want to think about creating a category like how right now there's no like endless category for an integrated product because there's no one really understands the advantage because it's very, very abstract. And recently I talked to someone and explained this, but I was having some examples from the single application page. He's like, you got to really make this more understandable. Why don't you show like the screenshots of the same process in a suite of so-called best-of-breed applications versus in GitLab? Because what you should see is that it takes way fewer clicks, way fewer changes of screens to do something. So show that, name the number of clicks, name the time it takes, show the difference, because this is all very abstract. And I have the feeling that even inside the company, we struggle to articulate it. I think I'm one of the best people to articulate it. Without that page, I'd be struggling to articulate it. And it's worse, like people don't believe it. And I don't blame them. I didn't believe it when Camille came to me. And Camille struggled to articulate why it was better. So that's our like top job at this company. Articulate why a single application is better, because that's the top advantage we have. And I think concurrent DevOps is kind of could be a rallying cry where, yeah, I'm doing DevOps. I'm doing no longer sequential DevOps that takes weeks to get something out. I'm doing concurrent DevOps, which makes it a lot faster. And if we can spread that idea and make it bigger than GitLab, it's going to be easier for people to demand something like that and to contrast GitLab with other solutions.
Okay, so I'm getting a little bit of an echo, maybe that's just me, but I don't disagree with anything you just pitched. And I think it's well thought out. And what you're talking about is the benefit of the product. And as a product company, I can see why, you're focused on that. The context of this conversation, the way it came up was we were trying to figure out a category that we can talk about in a bigger venue of than just DevOps professionals. So I have a concern about putting us in the DevOps space in perpetuity as the space we're saying we're playing in, because I don't think DevOps is big enough to hold all the value that GitLab actually creates in the software development lifecycle. And ultimately, I know you have even a bigger vision, which is not just the software development lifecycle necessarily, or how people think about it today, but it's, product managers being in there doing things, designers that may not traditionally have been in the software development lifecycle from a tooling perspective. So I think on one hand, DevOps is problematic as a category constraint for us because I think it puts us in too small of a box. So that's one concern I have. And then I think the question that we're trying to struggle with is concurrent DevOps isn't really a category, it's a benefit statement. And so it's not solving sort of this category yearning we have. If you look at the full other end of the spectrum, which is kind of company positioning, right now, it's everyone can contribute, which I think has a lot of legs if we actually put more thought into what that means and what category does that mean we're in if we're creating a platform where everyone can contribute. And so there's somewhere between concurrent DevOps and everyone can contribute that feels like the right category, but none of us have nailed it yet. But I just don't think concurrent DevOps is big enough, and I think everyone can contribute is fantastic in terms of setting a vision, but we have to name it, and that's falling somewhere in between. So that's kind of how I feel about it. It's not that concurrent DevOps is wrong by any stretch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let me respond to that. And Melissa, you're echoing, so only unmute when you talk. I don't disagree with anything you said. I think right now, if you ask the marketplace, they still see us as version control. So it would already be great if we break out of version control towards DevOps. Yes, our ambitions are bigger, and there are more people in the design side. Go beyond code, much bigger than that. But I don't want to, like, if you're too far ahead of where people think you are, like you might fall flat on your face. So I much rather, if we can own DevOps, I'd settle for that for the next 3 years. That'd be great. That'd be a great end result. And then we can make the box bigger. But if we make the box so big that no one really thinks we're a part of, like if we make it so big that we don't really are known as one of the biggest players in DevOps, which is happening right now, then I think that's a worse problem.
What if you're a software developer who you're in a company that's not really doing DevOps, or you think, oh, we have DevOps nailed? Like, what if you're so let's not maybe take the whole vision, but in terms of software development, is DevOps big enough to incorporate even what our tool actually does today?
Yes and no. There's some things at the edges where, like, do product managers really feel part of DevOps? Maybe not. Is the monitoring part? Yeah, that's part of operations. I think DevOps is big enough, and it's kind of, at some point, everyone shifted from kind of waterfall development to agile. Everyone's now shifting to DevOps development. So I think it's going to be a way to just refer to modern software development lifecycle. That is going to be equivalent with DevOps.
I don't know if I agree with that statement, and maybe we need to test that statement a little bit with, some industry folks, because maybe I'm wrong in not disagreeing with that statement.
Yeah, and maybe I'm wrong. Melissa?
Yeah, definitely. So I think my mind went exactly where Todd's mind went to. Is there a bigger, what are we trying to accomplish as a company in the future? Because it takes a really long time to build the message and get it out there. And so we would put a lot of resources into whatever we would figure out is the category creation. My other thought, though, as we continue talking, was from a DevOps perspective. I think about, I've been marketing DevOps for the past maybe 10 to 12 years, but I still think it's a trend that enterprises are still figuring out how to integrate DevOps into their software lifecycle development. And so if that, I'm just talking out loud here, but if that's where we're going for the next 3 years, and then we build on it again, in my mind, it becomes the resources of how do we how do we build that out? Make sure, I think the one good thing when I did a quick search from Concurrent DevOps from the SEO, we are like #1, and like the whole page was GitLab with Concurrent DevOps basically. But from obviously an analyst relations and from going bigger, we'd have a lot of work to do. So I think overall, I think I'm just trying to think through what Todd, you said it beautifully in terms of like, what is the bigger message from the company overall, and what are we trying to accomplish in the future? And then what would we put all of our resources behind to really deliver that message?
And is it big enough? I just linked an analyst report. In 2024, it's going to be DevOps is going to be a $10 billion market. So if we have a market share of 10%, we have $1 billion in revenue. We're a $10 billion company, which is, and if we have a 20% market share, we're a $20 billion company. Like that is the kind of numbers that we're looking for in that time frame. So I do think the market is big enough. I think the risk is 100%. We don't nail DevOps. We're not known as the DevOps tool and the way to do DevOps. I think that is 99% of the risk. I think there's only 1% of risk that DevOps doesn't become big enough. And if people watching this are looking for it, it's from Grand View Research, DevOps market size, where it's $12 billion by 2025.
So I think the thing that we would want to vet, and so, from a process perspective, what we're talking about here is wanting to get our message right so that if we invest essentially millions of dollars in awareness of this message over the next 18 months, that we didn't invest in the wrong thing. So that's sort of the context. And so I think maybe what we should do is test, concurrent DevOps or any other words we want to use around that with some analysts and C levels or probably not C levels, but like director VP levels, and just just kind of validate that they're thinking about DevOps holistically, kind of like Grandview is looking at here. And maybe that's true. And maybe part of the problem is that Melissa and I have been marketing in this space for a while, and that we're sort of, we're sort of in that space where we were taking a more narrow view of it, and DevOps has become a term that's almost synonymous with future software lifecycle development.
I do think that's happening. Look at how the word is taking off, and it's like this is almost hockey stick growth right here. So I think DevOps is taking off. It was the article I talked about earlier. So I have very little doubt that DevOps is the right category for us. I think I'm not sure that concurrent DevOps is the right thing. It's the best we came up with. I'm open for interpretations, but I think it's the best we currently have. But we should certainly test it. I think in parallel, right now it's the best thing. So I think we should stick to our messaging until we found better messaging. And I think it's very important to visualize why is concurrent DevOps better. And we can do that even if we change the word later on. Still, we want to visualize that. Our big benefit is a single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle. We better make it very appealing visually why that is, and make it so that everyone in the company has like 5 slides ready that give case after case after case why this is better for the people working in DevOps.
Just making an observation, just getting a sense of all of this. And it sounds, looking at this from a holistic standpoint, just the utilization of DevOps and concurrent DevOps, it kind of sounds like we're trying to move away from at least the overall message or the tone of we're just for developers, but more along the lines of, we're looking to get more people involved in software, making better software, as opposed to that dev focus or developer focus. Now, concurrent DevOps, I can see that working, and it's definitely rising, but the message that I'm kind of seeing from the whole vision of all this because we're including security, managing, designing, it becomes more about the, community of people. So it's more about people and utilizing and growing software.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, because this is where we started to go. And I think, maybe we got off the rails a little bit, but we were talking about this idea of co-creation. I think we need to bring that back a little bit and get it closer to DevOps from sort of Sid's convinced me on kind of the market size, and it's all we need to win right now. But I think you're right. There's a people element that we've got to help people understand. We're trying to be more inclusive in the process, or that's at least one benefit.
And I totally agree. The chasm we have to cross right now is ops. Like if we get the developers and the operations people, that's great. Right now, only the developers are using GitLab. So let's nail that first. And I'm not against including PMs and designers, and I'm actually pushing us to have that functionality for them in our application. But that's not the biggest thing we have to do right now. Our problem right now is that 95% plus of the people using GitLab are developers. So if we can get operations, which is at least as big of a market and much better paid, like much better paid as in they spend a lot more on software, that would just revolutionize what we are as a company. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make is going after, we're for everyone. We're for teams. Our competitor has team as a stock symbol, and they're going after that market, and that's fine. Let them. But we want to own the DevOps market, and then from there we can expand again, and we can name a team or whatever else. But right now, the biggest struggle is to appeal to operations people. And look, you can argue like, our security people part of operations are separate? I think they should be separate. And we can call it biz dev sec ops. And these are all stuff we talked about. But in the end, clarity trumps trying to be
everything to all people.
If you're everything to all people, you're nothing. And that's the right now people see GitLab as dev. So getting to DevOps would already be a huge improvement.
All right. Thank you for this. This is great.
Yeah, I think this was really helpful. And I do think when you were talking about our competitor, I do think that they're going to probably go after, I don't know, I'm having this feeling they're going to start going after more verticals, because they feel like they've already done more, they've already touched the developer space enough. So I do think they're actually going to go more on, I don't know, we'll see, but like, marketing verticals and product manager. Well, they're already kind of product manager, marketing, more business focused verticals. So we'll see what happens. But I do agree now that we've talked through this, and I think just talking about DevOps in general and seeing it, and I think being on the cutting edge of all this all the time, you forget that DevOps is just now still, there's just now enterprise are using DevOps and
we take it as a given, but like you look at like our biggest customers, Fortune 500, they implement GitLab and they go from weeks to minutes. But that's think about our customers. Those are the companies that are leading the change there, the most thoughtful companies. So we still have a lot to go, and let's get the rest of it as well. Like every Fortune 500 company should be using GitLab for DevOps. Let's make that case. Let's win that, and that will give us a lot of money and buy us a lot of time to take the next step.
Great. I think we're all done here with meetings back to back.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for this time.